Hello and welcome to this week's Whole Week Costa. For Kev, I'm Jay, and today we're going to be talking about probably two of my favorite episodes of the Clone Wars so far. Well, Voyage of Temptation, and then we go into Duchess of Mandalore, which is parts 2 and 3 of a 3-part story arc. Kev, you want to start us off with Voyage of Temptation?
Yeah, Voyage of Temptation. As the Jedi and their clones defend Dutchess Satine from assassination attempts, Anakin discovers that Obi-Wan and the Duchess have a history together. So, before we get into the episode, though, as we were waiting to start, I had the Wikipedia page up, and I saw one of the guest stars was Greg Proops. Greg Proops of Whose Line Is It Anyway fame. He actually plays... where'd he go now? He plays Tal Merrick in these episodes.
Okay, yeah, I saw his name on the credits.
I feel he kind of looks like Tal Merrick, though, right?
Yeah, except smaller.
Especially, I feel like the picture they picked for him here, he's definitely very Tal Merrick-like. So I thought that was funny. And then Jon Favreau, I mean, obviously has a lot of Star Wars involvement, but he apparently plays multiple Mandalorians between these episodes here and then the actual the Mandalorian show now, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. So this episode, the first episode of this arc, which we talked about last week, kind of feels like you kind of finish up the arc, like she kind of just walks away from Obi-Wan. Dutchess Satine walks away from Obi-Wan. You're like, okay, good episode, right? And this one, they're on the ship. And this episode's about how they're on the ship and they're talking about peace and they're having I guess a lover's quarrel before dinner. But the clone troopers find assassin droids. And then, this episode's about how the assassin droids are trying to kill Dutchess Satine. And so you're dealing with that lover's quarrel that you usually see with Anakin and Padme, but you see a more mature relationship between Dutchess Satine and Obi-Wan.
Yeah, I wonder how this will inform, how Obi-Wan deals with Padme and Anakin's relationship going forward, now that Anakin has seen that Obi-Wan kind of had a similar relationship. I mean, Obi-Wan chose the right path. He chose the Jedi Order instead versus Anakin, what happens with Anakin later on. So I guess it's a good juxtaposition there that you see.
What I've seen through this and extended Star Wars canon is that the Jedi and the problem Dooku has with the Jedi Order is the Jedi, the higher Jedi Masters, are do as I say, not as I do. They're a lot of them aren't leading by example. A lot of them are leading by the rules but going off and doing their own thing. So I think when it comes to that, he's gonna be I understand, Anakin, but you're a Jedi first, even though he went off. His excuse is oh, we were stranded for a year together, that's why we bore an attachment, even though the Jedi says no attachment.
Yeah, the other thing too is, I mean, it's easy to say, okay, well, Obi-Wan picked the Jedi Order over his personal attachment, but he says at the end, I think it's in this episode. Yeah, so yeah, it's at the end of this episode. He says that he would have left the Jedi Order if she said, which also is kind of a more mature thing than what Anakin does, right? Because essentially it's sort of like cheating, right, on your significant other, which is basically what Anakin does. Obi-Wan is would do, I guess what would be the right thing to do would be okay, well, this relationship's over, I'm going to end this relationship and then I'm going to move on to the next thing, versus Anakin is trying to stay in the Jedi Order, get the power and fame that he can get from the Jedi Order, get the teaching he can get from them, but then also live a life with Padme, which is so even in that context, I mean, Obi-Wan is infinitely more mature and makes or would make the more of the right decision than Obi-Wan would. You know, he would walk away from the Jedi Order.
Yeah, and I really see like the no attachment thing, but I still don't understand it. Like a general, like in our army or any army, like they can still have a family and they can go do whatever they have to do throughout the day. And like they treat it like a job, but I guess these guys are more like fighting monks than actual, generals, because there's a big difference between having an attachment to a senator or a duchess like these two have than just a local girl in Coruscant. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah. I guess in this world where there's a lot more intrigue than like in our world and assassination attempts and stuff like that. I mean the logistically, if you have a wife and family and stuff, then they can be used against you. But I mean, that's not the reason why the Jedi are doing it. The Jedi are doing it, yeah, because they're also a religion essentially, and that's just part of their beliefs. Which I mean, you could say is a failing. I mean, we have that in our real world where Catholic priests can't marry, and there's been a lot of controversy about that and supposedly bad things that have been done because of that rule versus a lot of the newer Christian religions, and by newer like in the last few hundred years, have sort of done away with that. And then and I don't know, at least for me, you picture like the Camdens on Seventh Heaven, where they're this like nice family and they're married, but he's also a man of God. That's sort of difference between that and the Jedi Order, where they have it's they're I agree, they're sort of like fighting monks would be a good way to describe them.
Yeah, and this is one of the this episode like Ray, she doesn't like anytime I ever watch anything that's animated. Oh, this is stupid. It's childish, right? But then like I'm watching this show and I'm like the conversation on the ship at the end of this episode where Dutchess Satine is being held hostage and they have that conversation where she's like, I love you, and I've always loved you, and Obi-Wan goes, oh, this is the right place and right time. And he's like, I would have loved, that conversation, like, hum on, like, oh no, my heart starts aching. Like, I feel bad for both of them. And it's like, just, this is good writing. On like the first season where you see the Anakin and Obi-Wan arguing, and you're like, this is terrible writing. Like, you can see like the writers also matured as writers for the second season.
I think part of it was the animation, because I feel like Obi-Wan and Satine fighting wasn't that great in this, but I feel like part of it was the animation. Like the just Obi-Wan angry face when they were arguing. Like I feel like you didn't get the subtlety of if a real actor was doing that. So and I wonder if in the early season, thinking back on it, if the animation was actually a bigger part of the problem than the actual dialogue.
Yeah, I see what you mean. But yeah, I think this episode's like really good. You get some backstory, and you get, I mean, it's a major part of the actual Clone Wars that you have, this planet that is known for their fighting. They're known for their prowess in battle and everything. And they're like, no, we're going to sit this out. We're pacifists now. Where you have this small sect that's like, oh, we still want to battle. Like we're still like warring. But then, you learn that it's from a civil war that wiped out like half the population. And you understand where both sides kind of come from. You go from, your old culture to this new culture of like pacification. And it is a very like difficult journey to be a part of. And then the separatists and the Republicans both want this warring, like this culture of war to be on their sides.
Yeah, I don't know. The other thing I was thinking too, because we're talking about the Jedi Order with the attachment thing, was I don't know. Are in shows like this, I guess the extremist people are the more interesting ones to follow, because that's kind of what the Jedi are, right? They're this pretty extremist order and have some pretty extremist beliefs as far as their lack of attachment and their lack of emotions and their beliefs in the Force. They're a very dogmatic religion essentially, and I think it's interesting. So I haven't watched all of the Mandalorian episodes from the second season. So not really a spoiler if you haven't watched any of them yet, but But our main character meets three other Mandalorians, and they take their helmets off, and he's like shocked, and he's like, oh, you show your faces, and then they tell us that he is actually part of a basically extremist Mandalorian cult, that he is not a mainstream Mandalorian, which was super interesting, because to that point, like, we think that's what Mandalorians are like, but they're not. I mean, we also know from the Clone Wars they're not like that, but at least in the show, he's presented to us as the typical Mandalorian, and that is not the case. So I thought it was interesting.
He's part of Death Watch.
Yeah, so it's super interesting. The other thing I thought watching this episode was, I don't know, did you feel... I felt like I was fat shaming a little bit, because when there was a trainer, did you think it was Orn Free-Taa because he's the fat guy? Because that's what I did.
Nah, I didn't think it was him because he was such like a, excuse my language, but he was such a bitch. Like, he was scared of everything. He was just fat. Like, I think he's the kind of senator that's in power because he has powerful people around him, and the powerful people are like, we're fine not going to war. And he's like, okay, I'm just fat and everything.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess if I really thought about it, Tal Merrick was obviously the traitor because he was the only one. And this is like not a great storytelling thing, but he was the one-off character. All the other senators we have seen before. He's a new guy, so obviously he was the traitor. And then
we saw the fat guy in the actual movies or the prequels too. So
yeah, exactly. So he's been around a long time. Anaconda Farr has been there before. The other guy, let me look. Ken Robb. No, yeah, I'm not sure. Was she there before? She's a human female. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. She also has a lot bigger role. I didn't recognize her like the other two.
Yeah, but yeah, he's just one and done. So I mean, we could talk about the entire episode, or we could talk about the ending of the episode, which is awesome. It's one of the best endings I've ever seen in this show.
Yeah, we had our second sort of Darth Vader moment, where only a Sith deals in absolutes. Where, sorry, go ahead.
Like kind of a comedy, like I feel like they played like the sitcom like comedy, like short of being their laugh track. Like I feel like maybe it was in my head, like the music changed and everything, like oh, you Anakin, after he murders a man.
Well, a lot of it was because of Anakin's face, right? Because there's this debate about not killing him because of pacifism and ideals, and then Anakin just comes up and just murders him. And then, but then they show Anakin, and he's like so proud of himself. He's like when a little kid does something they're not supposed to do, but they're excited about it. Like he's just like
what?
Yeah, like he's just like so proud of himself in that moment. So I think that's why Obi-Wan says something. He's like, I think it's like, what? He was gonna blow up the ship. Like so, but there wasn't, there's only the black and white for Anakin, and Ahsoka says that in the previous episode to Barriss. She says, oh, my master, will do whatever needs to be done, and that's what he does here.
You're right. It's like if you were cooking like pancakes for the whole family, and like one of your kids stay in the kitchen because everybody like went out to go see something on the television or whatever, and like that kid ate all the pancakes, and he came back in and his face like, what? They were here for eating, and you're like, why did you do that?
It's accurate.
Yeah. He was good. Like he even shrugged his shoulders after he murders the man. They're like, no.
Yeah. The other thing, the only other note I had for this episode was that, and so I wonder if you like some of the politics and intrigue stuff, because I'm not that into it, and that's why I like these episodes, but I didn't think they were like the best two episodes like you did. So my other note was that I just liked the Jedi doing cool stuff, not necessarily the politics. So the end of this episode was basically the whole episode for me.
Yeah, but I mean the whole politicky. Well, I like this first episode because there is like a sort of mystery, and like Obi-Wan has to deduce like who the traitor is. First they have to deduce that there's a traitor. Second they have to like figure out who it is, and like they kind of do like a mystery. And then the second episode was like it was a little politicky, but then there is like this like chase scene and intrigue. So it's like it hits a couple different beats for both of these episodes, and I really like that, and it shows the characters not as like these one-dimensional characters. Like sometimes we watch Anakin and Anakin's like, well, I'm gonna go kill everyone, and then 20 minutes later Obi-Wan scolds him like, well, why'd you do that? And Anakin's like, well, that's the Jedi way. And then like boop, 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 boop. And you're like, oh, okay. So this shows like Obi-Wan in like a different light. Like he's battling. It's the first time we really see him battle between like his feelings and being a Jedi. So it's like it brings more depth to good characters.
I agree. Do you want to move on to episode 14?
Yeah, we'll talk about next. We'll talk about Dutchess of Mandalore.
On Coruscant, word reaches Dutchess Satine that Death Watch is mobilizing, sparking a preemptive Republic invasion. On the run from Republic authorities, Satine and Obi-Wan set out to discover the group's true motives.
This episode, it also I liked, not as good as the ship, because I think the ending of that episode, the ending of the previous episode, like really was great. So this episode was good, but it didn't have as good of as an episode. It closed the arc, but I do like the whole on the run by accident thing, and Obi-Wan. You see more of his character, and more politics, like them, and Dooku like really framing the narrative for everything.
So this episode was back in 2010, so I wonder if at that point, I don't remember exactly, but, the last few years in American politics and stuff, we've sort of had our own problems, but I feel like 2010 was probably around the time or a little after the time when we were still dealing a lot with, the foreign occupation questions like in the Middle East and stuff, so I would guess this episode was more relevant back then. Like, obviously that stuff's still going on, but I feel like you don't hear about it as much. It's not as much in the forefront as it was probably in like the 20 in like the 20 aughts, which I guess this is right at the end of. This is February 2010. This episode came out. So that part I think was probably more intriguing back then. But yeah, as far as the actual in universe stuff though. Yeah, I thought it was interesting to see Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan was a little Anakin-like in this, as far as I don't know. He was kind of like a high school lover here a little bit, like how his level of concern for her, and every time something happened, he like ran to her to find out what happened, and he was like real sad when she wasn't there. Like it was like a real high school romance feeling. And I do feel like maybe that's part of the problem with the Jedi too, why they develop these unhealthy relationships like Anakin and Padme have, and like Obi-Wan has here with Satine, is because, if they're not really allowed to date and mature, then how are they ever going to progress past that immature relationship level,
It's like the first time you have a relationship with someone you're attracted to, you're like kind of stuck on them. And you're like, oh, okay. It's sort of like, have you watched the second Wonder Woman yet?
No.
I probably
will eventually. I don't know.
It's trash. But anyway.
I assumed.
So this takes place in 1984. And the entire reason it takes place in 1984 is the stupidest reason ever. Like, they could have just had a whole different plot, and you would have had modern. But anyway. So Steve Trevor dies in 1918 or 1917. And this place takes place in 1984, and she's still sad over Steve Trevor, right? Like 70 years later or whatever. I'm not doing the math. So 65 years later or whatever, and she's still like pining, like, no, I'll never love again. Like, dog, it's been 65 years. And then you kind of realize, like, these women on the island, like, they never met a man. They've never been in a relationship. And it's like the same things happen with the Jedi. You find the first person that you fall in love with, and you're like, this is it, this is me, and that's I think that brings home more your point, like more evidence, like they should just let them have regular relationships or bad shit happens.
Yeah, man, like yeah. I'm kind of curious to see the movie now, just to think about that while I'm watching it, because I mean, we're both in our 30s. How many people earlier in your life did you? And this is, let's say, 10 or 15 years now later, were you like in love with or like dated that like you barely even remember at this point? Because there's a few people for me like that I really would have to strain to like even remember anything about them. So and probably have not thought about until the context of this conversation, you know.
You can't even remember like their last name, and you're like, was it
Yeah.
Karen with a C or Karen with a K? And then you're like looking at like older, you're like, oh, it was Katie. It wasn't even Karen. You're like, God damn it.
Dude, well, I was trying to remember. So this is really weird, and this is totally off topic, but just a real quick story. So the first girl I ever kissed might be like a second cousin to my wife, but I'm not sure because I can't remember her name exactly. Um, because we found out it's like, I don't know, her aunt's cousin or something, I don't know, is went to my school, and her name is, I think the name of the girl that I'm thinking of, but I honestly I can't 100% be sure of what her name was.
Well,
So,
when when I was like 12 or 13, there was a neighborhood girl that was like a year or two younger than me, and like I used to hang out with her brother, and like we always talked about how we're gonna like live. I remember like talking about like, we're gonna get married one day, and we're gonna be in love, and we're gonna have a million kids, and we're gonna go on vacations. And I remember that. I can't remember what she looks like, can't remember her name, can't even remember what house she lived in.
yeah, I can't quite remember what the girl looks like either, because I've seen a picture of the second cousin, obviously, now that we've talked about it, and I she looks familiar, but I can't remember. I don't know, dude. It was I guess it was, I mean, it was more than 50% of my life ago, but um yeah, I don't know. So anyway, so yeah, 65 years to still be pining over this guy is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I think you're right. It does, it's the same thing as here. Like there, these things exist in the world, love and attachment and stuff. Most people can't totally get rid of them. So wouldn't it be better to know how to control them? Like, it almost doesn't make sense, right? Like through the force, you learn to control everything else. So why would you not, basically even just think of it as training, like train to really control your emotions, like, and again, like think about the high school girlfriend that you had that you were really jealous whenever she went out somewhere with her friends and you thought, wow, she might be talking to another guy or something, versus like when you're in a, later in life and you're in a relationship or something, and then it's like, oh yeah, oh no, go out to that club, like I'll see you tomorrow, like, because you just mature, and like you don't think all these crazy scenarios in your head, and you control your emotions, and you have this line of experience where it's like, okay, well, I've been in this situation a bunch of times before, everything was fine, so it's going to be fine again, but like you don't just know that from birth.
Yeah, I think now we're thinking about it. Coruscant, like anywhere there's a Jedi temple, there should be like, I don't know, Jedi brothels where the Jedi's can just go have sex and like clear their minds and be like, okay, now we can do this without thinking about women.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean,
or alien, whatever the species is. It's
yeah,
all.
but then you need to go there like every hour if you wanted to clear mind.
Oh, what's wrong with that?
Yeah. It'd be so time consuming.
Yeah. Meditation would be easier, but yeah, this is another pretty good episode of more of a it's the present, but you still see, you kind of understand the relationships Obi-Wan had, and she calls Obi-Wan Obi, and then you see Obi-Wan fight and get like beat up again. Like he's got to be one of the worst fighters in this galaxy.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the meme where it's like 4 panels? It's like, don't worry, Jedi or Sith are our specialty, and like every panel, it's like the Sith beating him up.
Yeah, but he always wins in the end.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, Darth Vader cuts him in half.
I mean, how many? Yeah, well, but I mean, did he though, or was that intentional? Like, did he just disappear?
Oh, well, I guess he got struck down and then became a Force ghost. And that was a lie to me because when I watched that, I'm like, oh, he's a Force ghost. This is okay, gotcha. They explained that. You see him later as a ghost and everything. And then when Qui-Gon got stabbed in the stomach and died, and like I was like, oh, he's not dying. And then he disappeared. But then you watch Order 66 and these guys just fall down and die. And then they have burial. No, they had a burial for Qui-Gon. That's right.
Well, they're special training to learn how to do that. Qui-Gon did not complete his training, so that's why he can only manifest partially.
Yeah. Well, Qui-Gon, yeah, I don't think if Qui-Gon was still alive, I don't think any of this shit would have happened. Like Qui-Gon's like
Yeah.
such a like he is a Jedi. He's like, "Oh yeah, just be patient." Like he's one of those Jedis that we see in previous episodes. Like that old man Jedi we saw last week. He's just patient. And like he would have never had a relationship with Satine. Like he was like, "Okay, see you later," and like never formed that attachment.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really curious because I feel like the more I read about the more I read about Qui-Gon, I don't know. I want to go back and watch like episode 1 again and just sort of soak more of that in because I think I think a lot of casual people, which is what I would consider myself until maybe this last year, really didn't appreciate him for as much as he was. But the other thing I was thinking too, though, when you mentioned Satine calling him Obi, was do you think there's like one asshole clone trooper who calls him Juan all the time? He's like, my name's not Juan. But I like the one continuity thing in here that they showed. They showed like the entrance to the Senate building, like in the episode 1 or 2 of this season, when that episode where like Cad Bane was attacking. I thought that was cool. And then the other note I took too was classic Dooku at the end where he's talking to the Death Watch commander and he says, "A neophyte such as you wouldn't understand these things, but I do."
Oh, that and we actually no, it was the last episode. Yeah, actually, sorry, it was the last episode. The Senate guards are actually useful, like they're blocking like lasers and shit like that. And you see these Senate guards, and you're like, wait, are they badass?
Yeah, right. I mean, because they must be. Because if you guys remember from the Senate Commando episode from the first season, it was interesting because these guys were not. At least not all of them. I don't know if not all of them or none of them are clone troopers. These are like guys from like basically high up like families that have a line of being Senate guards and are basically more in the upper class than the cannon fodder clone troopers. These guys aren't clones basically.
It's like a more of Imperial not Star Wars Imperial troopers, but like Imperial troopers like the British or the Spanish, where you actually pay to be a general or like a lieutenant or some shit like that. Like your family pays, and like now you're a lieutenant,
Yeah.
or a general.
Well, I guess that happens everywhere too, right? Because if you're better educated, like in the United States, you enter the military at like a higher rank too.
Yeah, I mean, you can go to West Point, but you don't have to know someone, but it's easier if you know someone because you got it signed off by a congressman as well.
Yeah.
And then back in the day during the Civil War, people were still paying to be generals, and they were like terrible generals, and Lincoln had to like fire some.
Yeah, but any other thoughts on this episode? I think we really sidetracked on this one a lot, but hopefully it was interesting still.
What come here for?
Yeah.
But one of my major thoughts is like you get this thing about like the Mandalorians. I've heard the history between the Mandalorians versus the Jedi and like the Death Watch and everything. I mean, they're sometimes they nerf their power too much, or they're like too powerful. Like there's no consistent like power to these Mandalorians. I'm like, so is he going to kill this Jedi, or is he not going to kill this Jedi? Or you don't like. That's what I don't like. There's no consistency to like the Mandalorians' fighting prowess.
Well, I feel like just from thinking about all the duels that we've seen from the movies and this far in the Clone Wars, and then in some of the Mandalorian episodes, I feel like I feel like a Mandalorian can hold his own against a Jedi, but is a little bit disadvantaged because of the lightsaber. That's sort of the impression I get, because the Jedi have a weapon that can in one swipe kill a Mandalorian. A Mandalorian has
Actually, the lure for the Mandalorian is their best car, which can't. That's why they mined the best car. That's why it was so. That's why it was so important to like the Empire and everything to destroy the Jedi, because Beskar, pure Beskar, the lightsaber can't go through. That's why they actually stood a chance.
yeah. Well, we see that too in one of the Mandalorian episodes. Again, not really to have a spoiler, but there's a Beskar spear, and you see a lightsaber hit it, and it doesn't go through. But still, they're not covered head to toe in Beskar, so the lightsaber. I mean, you have to pick your spot, but you can kill a Mandalorian with a lightsaber versus a lot of the Mandalorians' weapons, especially blasters and stuff, we know aren't that effective against Jedi because they usually can deflect them. So in a one-on-one battle where they're focused just on the Mandalorian, those shots aren't going to get through.
Right.
But yeah, I feel like whenever I see those two groups fight, I assume the Jedi is going to win, but it's going to be a tough fight. And then obviously if the Mandalorian had help, then it would be a different story.
Yeah. So yeah, that's really all for the episodes. Like I really like these episodes. It kind of focused on the war, but it didn't. Like it was more of like a side. It was more of a side quest.
Yeah. Oh, one thing. So, anyone that's listening, still go to the Wikipedia page for this article because they have the comparison of the doctored recording and then the actual recording. And essentially, what they did, and I think this is really clever. So, they took what Jarek said, and they just cut out parts. So that's how they made the recording. It really is a recording of him, but they edited it to take out words in the middle that change the meaning.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't see that, so I'll have to check that out myself.
Yeah, so they sort of have in bold what the fake recording was. So it's like Death Watch is far stronger than we once thought. That's in both. But then they cut out, but we have been training for this. We can stop them. And then they cut out the word but, which then changes the meaning because the real thing says, but if we are to combat them effectively, we must have the temerity to stand strong in the name of peace. But they cut out some words, so instead the recording says, if we are to combat them effectively, we must have Republic assistance. So they cut out the thing about peace. So it's pretty interesting if you read the side by side.
All right. Well, for Kev, I'm Jay. Thanks for checking us out this week. Check out our podcast at Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcast. We have over 100 episodes. I think we're at like 140. I'm not 100% sure on this. You can check us out Whole Week Costa, Spotify, Stitcher, Libsyn, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, where Kev is getting better at making videos. They look great, so please check them out and give us a follow.